Welcome to the introduction of Lab 02, Interacting with GUI Elements. We'll start with revisiting the onCreate event response, the setContentView method, how to assign on-click listeners to our buttons, and the Alt-Enter magic key combination. As you recall, the Android operating system is persistent. That means it's running all the time. When an activity is launched, it triggers the onCreate event. In this method, we respond to the event, and our first act is to set the content view to r.layout.activityMain. This XML file defines the user interface. It creates the objects and the displays, and what the user interface will look like. At this point, this file is instantiated, and the objects in it are brought to life, and we have access to it. setContentView controls the display of what our app will look like. Last time, we went over how to assign a listener to our objects. On the increment button, we set an on-click listener, and in this case, we'll make an anonymous class. And remember, at this point, we use the Alt-Enter key combo to auto-implement the abstract methods. It creates the headers for us. And then we define what to do inside of it. The other way to set an on-click listener is to come to the object and set its on-click property. When this event occurs, call the decrement method. It is found in the main-activity.java file, and there's our decrement method. Then we're going to talk about view groups versus views. View groups are the invisible containers that our views are stored within. We'll work a lot with constraint layout and linear layout, and inside each of these containers, we can also put another container. For example, inside the constraint layout, we could have a linear layout, and we will have a scroll view later, which will contain a linear layout. And inside those view groups, we'll have objects such as text views and buttons like we did last time. An example would look like this. Here, we have the tag for a radio group, and then this is the ending tag for it. So everything in between is contained within this container view group. In this case, it's two radio buttons that are self-closed and do not contain anything. Looking at our work from last time, we can go to our activity main XML here. When I select this, you can see constraint layout. This is the tag, and this is the closing tag. Everything in between here belongs to constraint layout. Now, we're going to demonstrate the logcat and the debugger. We're going to use the logcat to look at our errors, and we'll use the debugger to identify the current state of the variable. To turn on the logcat for myself, I have to scroll down to the bottom here and click logcat. You should have a logcat running at the bottom already. When logcat starts, you should immediately verify that you're connected to the correct device. You can see that I have an older emulator that's currently disconnected. Sometimes you'll be connected to that item and therefore you won't see any messages. Make sure you're connected to the current one and the correct one. Right now we're looking at a whole bunch of gibberish. Let's run our app and we shouldn't see any problem. And there's a program. Everything's working now. Let's show off debugging. Now we're going to purposely break our program and see what happens. Here's where we instantiate increment button. Let's go to Control/ to comment out that line, and let's see what happens. We're going to run the program, and boom! A lot of angry red. You can see it says, hey, there's a runtime exception error. It can't start an activity, and it has something to do with null pointer exception. Here we go. We're trying to set an on-click listener on an object that may not exist. And you can see here, null point object reference. And you can see a similar summary down here about the no pointer exception. It's helpful to look for things that are in blue. The blue tells you where it is occurring. So in this case, it's in the main-activity.java file on line 21. Now we can scroll to line 21 manually, but we can click this instead, and it will take us to the line where the error occurs. And that gives us a hint that this object right here is not instantiated. And then we have to go figure out why. In this case, I know why it's not instantiated because we commented it out. Now we're going to go with a different approach this time. I'm going to put down a breakpoint. Notice I'm on line 20, and if I clicked breakpoint, it'll put a red dot there. Then I'm going to click Run Debug. Notice the debugger comes up down here, and that the program stops at line 20. It hasn't run line 20 yet. Look at here, greeting display is still currently null. At this point, before this line has been run, it's null. I can look down here. There's my greeting display. It is currently null. Increment button is also currently null. Now the two buttons that you want to see is this arrow here. If you click this, it steps over this line. That means it executes this line and then pauses at the next line. The other option is to run to cursor. If you have a program that is repeatedly running, what you can do is put a cursor here and say run until you get to this. So when it's finished running this, you can click on it again, it'll run a whole cycle, and when it comes back, it'll hit this line again, it will pause. So that's useful for if you're making a game, or if you want one iteration of a screen, or you want to cycle fast to the next until you get to the state you're looking for. Now, I'm going to hit the step over, and now it's executed this line, and you can see that greetings display now has an object in it. And you can see that object down here. You can click these arrows and look into its fields. So that's what the Fs are. And if you go far enough, sometimes they have methods in there too. In this case, it's just a whole lot of fields. Our increment button is still null. I'm going to step over that, and then I get into this exception error. I'm going to go back to the main activity, wait there, I'm going to hit Control/, uncomment that, get rid of my error, and clear this out. Now, we're going to change the app name and the icon. We'll start with the name. To fix the name, we can go to strings.xml and then look for our app name and adjust it. We'll go down to Resource, strings.xml down here, and there's our first Really Fun Lab. We'll call it Really Fun Lab 02. And there we go. Let's verify that it works. We're going to hit Run. And ta-da! Really Fun Lab 02. Now, we're going to change the icon. So you want to click on this link here to get to a web page that will help you create an icon. From here, the website will help you create icons of your choosing. In my case, I'm going to use an image because that's really fun. Okay, there's my image. You can see all the outlines that will define the different shapes and so forth. We're going to make mine a little smaller. Oh, whoops, wrong way. All right. That way, I make sure everything will fit. Let's test it. I'm going to click Download. Then, I'm going to open the downloaded image. And there are all my files. I go inside, I see the iclauncher.png file, which is the default name. You can customize that name if you'd wish. And then when I go back to Android Studio, what I want to do is put all of those files in the MinMap folder. I'm going to right-click on Resource, go down to Show in Explorer, then I'm going to double-click Resource, and there I go. I'm going to take my files from my zip folder and drag it and drop it into my Android Studio project. Replace all the files. I'll click File New, then come down to the image asset. In this case, all the images are already set because I used the same name, but you can click here and try to identify which one you need. If you have any problems with the default directory being in the wrong place, you can come up here to your bar and hit Control-C to copy your path name. And then you can paste it in here, and that way you have the correct folder. And then you can come down and choose the file. We're going to select this file, it's the one that we want, and then we're going to choose Next, and
then it is finished, and your files get added. Right-clicked app, selected New, and Image Asset. Change the source path. You may have had to copy your directory from wherever you opened your file. Alright, some shortcuts that are helpful. Let's mess this up a little bit. We're going to mess up these lines of codes on purpose, so it's not so pretty. Then I can use Ctrl-A to select everything, and then do Ctrl-Alt-I to line everything back up. If I want to see the parameters, I hit Ctrl-P. In this case, you see it says I want the ID, which is going to be an int. It is expecting an integer here. If you hit Ctrl-P here, it says, hey, I'll take anything. You give me a boolean, a character, an int, a long, a float, a double, an array of characters, a string, object, whatever you give me, I'll handle it. Another Ctrl-P says, give me a tag, which is a string, and then give me your message, which is also a string. And then if you want to throw an error, you can do that too. Ctrl-D will duplicate the line. We have commenting and uncommenting. I can highlight this, Ctrl/comments, Ctrl/ again, uncomments it. And then you're like, hey, I want to see who wrote this code, what it looks like. We can hit Ctrl-B, B as in boy. We can see the setText method and what it does. In this case, it looks like it just sends it to its parent, but then you can follow that, click that, and hit Ctrl-B again, and it goes to the parent. Ctrl-B and it could go up and up. Here are some links that you'll find helpful for finding more shortcuts. Then what you want to do is Google string resource or string resources, and you'll learn about storing arrays and items into strings.xml, and then using Java code to retrieve that string array and store it into a string resource. Let's Google string array Android. And there's our string resources. We're going to come here to string arrays, and you'll see they give you the format for creating a string array and storing the values, and then how to access it. You'll make a string array tag, and then give it a name, and then put in your items. You can see that this is items 0, 1, 2, and 3. Just like in an array, you start indexing at 0. And then to access it, you create a string array, or an array of strings, call it whatever you'd like. Get resources. The method is getStringArray, and you pass it the name, and it goes and grabs these 4 and puts it into an array starting at 0, 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to format strings with arguments or parameters. In this case, the example will have 2 parameters. The first one being %1, and the second one is %2. First, we'll receive a string, and then we'll receive a decimal. To access that string, we'll use getString, r.string, and the name of the first argument. So it could be Bob, and the second one could be 13. You would say, hello Bob, you have 13 new messages. You can also use HTML markup, so go here and you can see the valid tags. There's a subscript, we have bigger letters, we have bold, we have underline, strike through, superscript. We even did an example of font changes for you. Please note some things. If you want to customize your text size, use SP units, such as Android text size 20 SP. And then, if you want to control the spacing or the padding between your views, use DP units. So you would use 20 DP instead of 20 SP. We'll get more into detail about these two later, but for now, use this convention. And there we go. That was our introduction to GUI elements. We'll have another video walking you through Lab 02. But for now, happy coding. Thanks for watching.